In a world where knowledge is no longer a superpower, it's a standard, our energy is really the only skill we have left to double down on, right? Our energy rich skills, our intuition, our adaptability, our empathy, our creativity. These are the only elements we really have left to double down on as leaders, as professionals. And so, how we manage that precious asset, a little bit more like our time or our money, is really what I believe is kind of the future for peak performance, no matter where you are in your career.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Keynote Curators podcast. I'm Seth Deckman, your Keynote Curator. I'm so excited to introduce our guest today. Please welcome young Erin King. Erin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, medium well, Seth. It is so lovely to see you, my friend.
Yes, we're all young at heart, we're young in spirit, and we have young energy, which we're going to be getting into here right from the start. Before we do that, I just want to welcome all of our return viewers and subscribers and listeners. Just thanks for always tuning in for these great conversations. And to first-timers, we appreciate it. Thanks for coming in. You like us enough to come on in, love us, and stay. It'll be worth your while. So Erin King, here you are on our podcast, and you are just a ball of energy, which is really what your main focus is when you deliver keynotes. Many people, I've heard you call it their spirit, their aura, their power, their spark, their zest. I want to throw a few into the mix just to soften the ground a little bit. Verve, vigor, vitality, fire, energy, dynamism, vivacity, radiance, magnetism, charisma. But talk to us a little bit how you arrived at this whole idea around energy and the importance of it and how in your world it really trumps everything.
Well, I love the word vivacity. I haven't heard that one. That's a powerful adjective. I like that.
Vivid,
I like it.
Vivacity, vividness. Yeah.
Vivacity. I love it. Well, ultimately, Seth, in the age of AI, which having hired how many keynote speakers around AI lately, I'm sure I saw on your LinkedIn, that's kind of the new hot buzzword topic. And all of a sudden, a lot of our very smart keynote speaker friends are learning AI as fast as possible to throw their hat in the ring on that very hot topic. But the truth is, we can't really compete with computers on competency anymore. And so in a world where knowledge is no longer a superpower, it's a standard, our energy is really the only skill we have left to double down on, right? Our energy rich skills, our intuition, our adaptability, our empathy, our creativity. These are the only elements we really have left to double down on as leaders, as professionals. And so how we manage that precious asset, a little bit more like our time or our money, is really what I believe is kind of the future for peak performance, no matter where you are in your career. So backing things up, I started off running a social media agency for 15 years. We were sort of at the forefront of the whole social media thing. There was a selfie that broke the internet back in 2014 from the Oscars, and it was Ellen and Bradley Cooper and Julia Roberts and Brad Pitt. Well, my team was on the red carpet when that selfie happened, so it kind of put us on the map. And we became the agency of record for Freeman, working in the events business, one of the largest events companies. So we were the social media company behind all the big conventions and conferences, CES and SEMA and all the shows that your listeners know very well. And so we were back at the house, and I'll never forget, I was live tweeting Amy Cuddy's keynote on presence, and she was standing and doing the big body language about how you can stand a certain way, and that'll help you feel the confidence that maybe you don't feel naturally, trick your body into feeling more confident. And about 30 minutes after I finished slide tweeting her keynote, which was fabulous, one of the meeting planners came up to me and they were just in tears, mascara down their face, losing their mind, because in the other Sands Expo breakout room, they had 350 people for a social media session, but the social media speaker had missed their flight. So she said, can you just go out there and talk about what you and your team do for us behind the scenes social media wise? So I went in the bathroom. I am back of house. I'm not the talent, right? I don't have a stitch of makeup on. Right. I have my ugly trade show flats, and I'm holding my arms up like Amy Cuddy told me to in the bathroom, wiping off the upper lip sweat. And when I got up there, it was kind of like the scene from Old School with Will Ferrell, where he blacks out during the debate and he has no idea what happens. And afterward, they win the debate. That's kind of what happened. And always brands were asking me to come and talking about social media and sales and what's your fee. And I'm like, wait, you can get paid to share what you know? Are you kidding me? This is amazing. Like, sign me up. So a couple months later, I was watching a documentary called The Social Dilemma that you may have seen, which
Yep.
is okay. So there's a scene from that documentary that is very haunting, where there's a marionette puppet, and it shows us as sort of these puppets, and the algorithms are directing what we think and how we feel and what we value and our emotions. And I'll never forget sitting there. I think it was 2020 or 2020, and seeing that and thinking to myself, wow, I've been in this business for 15 years and I don't know if this is what I'm really passionate about. I don't know if this should be my legacy. Like, social media is not inherently good or evil. We connect on social, we make our livings on social media, but there's also this very dark side to it. And so in that moment, right then and there, I realized I couldn't unsee or unhear what I had learned that day. And so I began the process of selling my agency. So I sold my company in 2021 to a Fortune 500 company called Strike Point Media based out of New York. And then all of a sudden, Seth, I was so lost, like just hot mess, dumpster fire, did not know what to do with myself. So everyone's asking me to speak on sales, leadership, social media, personal development. Like, I'm just like, sure. I'd made the classic keynote speaker mistake of having like 97 different topics. And there was one week where I did 5 different keynotes, 5 different slide decks, 5 different cities in 8 days. And I came home to my team and I was on a Brady Bunch call, just like this, with all the boxes. And Sarge on my team was asking me a question. And all of a sudden I couldn't hear her and I couldn't see and I couldn't swallow and I couldn't breathe and everything went dark. And I woke up in the ER, I had a full on panic attack, which felt like a heart attack if you ever had any kind of anxiety issues. And in that moment, I was like, this is not sustainable. I need to figure out, what am I on this earth to talk about? What is my real mission? What is the real impact I want to make? And so I took my husband's boat budget because he wanted horsepower, but I needed brain power. And I hired this team of super smart PhD researchers. And we spent 18 months studying personal human energy. Because my question was, as an entrepreneur, I felt like I was always either working really hard and making it happen, but I was miserable, or I'm off the clock, powering down, but that's not sustainable, forever, right? So I always felt like I was in this kind of yo-yo energy management of powering through and powering down. So my question was, how can we really manage our energy to have more sustainable, high performing, but also high enjoying time on, with our one wild precious life, shout out Mary Oliver, on this
Yes,
planet.
right.
And
Yeah.
that was the question that we asked them. And so, working with so many speakers, that there's tons of research studies. Some of them are like, a little survey monkey forum with 10 people. But this, we interviewed 10,000 people over 18 months. And we really started to understand the small group of people that had high energy, but also high life satisfaction score. They just make different choices than the rest of us. And so learning what they do, creating a framework around it, and then sharing it with some of the world's biggest brands the last 2 years has really tapped into, as you can tell me talking about it, it's more aligned. I'm more passionate about it. And I stopped looking at my keynote calendar and saying, okay, I have to just get through this week and get through this and get through this. Now I truly feel like, wow, I get to be doing,
Yeah.
the 4 gigs I have next week. So yeah. And blowing up your whole world and starting from scratch, it's expensive and it's scary and it's tough. But if you do have the audacity to kind of power through, on the other side of that tunnel really is a beautiful light of feeling like you're operating kind of in your purpose and in your alignment and hopefully making a teeny bit of a difference along the way. So that's my long story long.
I love it. And that's what we're here for. It's really, you hear the phrase from breakdowns come breakthroughs, and it could be like a physical breakdown or an emotional breakdown, spiritual breakdown, financial breakdown. This, you had this panic attack. But my question is, there was something in your spirit, in your willfulness, whether you were powering through or powering up, which you were yet to power up. It seems like the batteries were depleted, and that's the journey of beginning to power up. But what is it in your core essence prior to the research, prior to the breakdown, that is still that through line, that thread that would pull through, a characteristic of who you are that said, okay, it might be expensive, in every sense of the word, not just financially, in all my resources, my energy, my creativity, the things that I'm passionate about, that had you get to the other side?
Well, I think we've all had a situation where we have walked into a high stakes moment and felt woefully unqualified. We have felt like we zoom out and think, what on earth are we doing here? Who do
How
we
did
think
I
we are?
get here?
How did I get here? Who do I think I am? And immediately you're thinking of the 5 people you wish you could call, phone a friend to bat in for you that you know could probably shine brighter in that moment than you.
Right. You need your
So
lifeline.
you need your lifeline, exactly. And so, when I was trying to figure out what the heck I wanted to do next after my social media company, there was a brief stint before I figured out the energy piece where I actually started a subscription business, an e-commerce business, and it was for women's monthly healthcare needs. So magically delivered monthly. It was kind of like a Dollar Shave Club, but for women's healthcare. And I'll never forget, I had been working on this for about a year, putting together the whole game plan, FDA regulations and Chinese shipping policies and back-end management and content management and learning how to do an online business. I had seen Michael Dubin of the Dollar Shave Club sell his company for $1 billion with a B
Yeah.
to Unilever. And I was like, he's just shipping razors. Like, surely I can replicate this guy's success. So anyway, I was in Newport Beach, California, and there was this huge, big, shiny conference table with the blue, sparkling Pacific Ocean through the windows, this really fancy office. And it was a bunch of venture capitalists. It was 12 very tan, very buff, jacked alpha bros who were like 2 seconds out of a CrossFit. They'd come in their Ferraris, blaring Kanye before he was canceled. Like, these guys, right? So they're all sitting around this conference table, and I'm pitching my idea for them to back me. And it was like a Shark Tank moment, right? And in the middle of this conference table of very bro-y alpha bros is a Mount Everest sized pile of female healthcare monthly devices. And so I'm doing the pitch, and it's one of those moments, just like you believe in what you're doing so much, and you're so excited that you don't realize till you're halfway through that everyone is looking at you. And one of the guys, his name was Todd, because in these situations, there's always a Todd, right?
Yeah, I was just going to say that he was right out of central casting.
Totally. So Todd looks like, if I keep talking about this business idea for women's health, he is 100% going to vomit his overpriced sashimi lunch all over this table. So I stopped and I froze. And it was kind of just one of those moments where someone else's reaction to you just takes out all your confidence, takes out all your excitement. And they started to throw the devices back and forth across the table. Dude, I dare you to open one. I dare you. So the world's first game of like grown man hot potato, you know what, kind of breaks out in this room. And I'm like, this never happens on Shark Tank. So I remember I kind of flashed back to middle school. And when you're an adult, you have these moments where you're feeling really insecure. It reminds you of when you're a kid and the last time you felt like you didn't know what life was about. So I was bullied terribly in middle school. I'm not sure if you were cool in middle school, but I was not. The game was small and same and safe, and I was none of those things. And so I got bullied terribly. I had a terrible haircut. It was like a perm and a mullet put together. It was a disaster. Anyway, my grandmother, Nana, was an Irish immigrant. And when I'd come home, I'd be crying, and she would tell me, she'd be like, love, it's always better to be someone's shot of whiskey than everyone's cup of tea. Now, regardless of whether or not the alcohol reference to a middle schooler was appropriate, it was the 90s, it's cultural, whatever. But I remember her telling me that. And so I flashed back to the conference room as an adult. I remember thinking, like, I know exactly what Nana would do in the situation. So I grabbed one of the devices from the guy. I made it my microphone and my pointer. I won the room back over. And I ended up walking out of there 3 hours later with a term sheet for 7 figures. And we were featured in Forbes magazine. So we had like 18 months of this subscription business was blowing up. And then an investor came over from Asia, and the 3-letter URL of the business was worth so much more than the actual company. They bought it out, and I was back to square one again. Right. And
Goodness.
so you have these moments where I remember thinking, like, I don't belong here. I don't have what it takes. I'm in over my head. But then, there's people in your life where it's a certain energy that you embrace. It's an energy of why not me? It's an energy of I deserve to be here. It's an energy of giving it your best shot. And that vibe was what they bought on. And at the end of the meeting, one of the investors, there was 12 guys, and 11 of them said no. Only one of them said yes. And what he said was, I obviously don't know much about this particular product being a man, but What I do know is the smartest people bet on the jockey and not the horse. And so I'm betting on you. And so when you think about the race you're running, it doesn't matter what kind of horse you have. It's the jockey. It's how you're showing up energetically, because your vibe is your ultimate value and your energy will always outperform your expertise.
Well, that's a great point. The jockey versus the horse. You mentioned earlier, you mentioned today it's going to be dated. This will be published later, but we have a post today about AI and speakers on AI. And what we did was we assembled a variety, a tech humanist, somebody who actually builds stuff, an AI ethicist. So we tried to give a potpourri, a wide range of AI speakers. But it is true, many do glom on to the mode of the moment, whether it's how to talk to Gen Zers, go green, be rich going green, DEI, whatever the mode or the fashion of the moment is. But what is consistent is, like you said, the good jockeys ride and they ride to win, and they have the energy that matches. And one of the comments that I had made to somebody who commented on today's post was that there is no being in AI, and it's all just numbers, it's bits and bytes, and it's all about this very dry results, which is great. You need that type of competence. So I loved how natural and organic, and the serendipitousness of how you arrived at this conversation around energy, because really it's a question of having the energy is important. It's paramount. It's number one. But Erin, is it possible? Is it sustainable to be at 10 all the time? And talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So what's interesting in our study is that we found there are really 5 key types of energy that people is their fastest scientific shortcut to personal power,
Is
right?
that the power
And
grid that you've developed?
yes,
Okay.
yes. You doing your homework. You're a good podcast host. That's wonderful. Thank you for that prompt. Yes, the power grid shows the sources and spaces of energy. And the problem is when we try to tap into all the sources and all the spaces, that's when we get all the things anxiety, the overwhelm, the frustration. That's when we throw in the towel and just say, well, we're just burnt out, the end, give up. So what power grid helps you figure out is it's a 5-minute assessment, the energy exam that you take. And you discover basically that, yes, if you can do all of those things, spiritual, emotional, mental, social, if you can do all those things all the time, great. If you can feel in control, confident, connected all the time, great. But most of us aren't able to really realistically do that. And so the power grid helps you to show your fastest path to power, your intersection of your fastest source and space that you need to power up and bring your best, even especially when you don't feel like it. And even especially when you don't have time to sleep 9 hours, eat kale till the cows come home, and drink those cheer you on Amazon gallon water bottles. There's a lot of wellness advice out there. And the conversation that I'm having with my work is not really about wellness and sleep more. It's really about how do you manage your mental energy to be able to bring your best. And what we found is that the 5 different energy types, certain energy types are just naturally higher vibe than others. So, for
Mm.
example, if you have kinetic energy, your fastest path to power is you need a challenge, you need to compete. So, your baseline energy level is much higher perceived by others than if you had responsive energy.
And
Responsive energy,
kinetic for the middle schooler, that wasn't cool either. Just movement. You need a lot of physicality. Is that
the more
literally
you're
what
in
you mean?
motion, the more you're in motion, the more energy you get. So these are the signs that have seemingly endless energy, but the shadow side is they're also the ones that burn out the hardest because they don't
Mm.
stop until they physically have to. So on the other hand, you have responsive energy, and their fastest path to power is they need space. These are the deep empaths, the processors. So they don't come across as the same level of energy as the kinetics. But what's important to know as a leader in today's world is that leaders tend to manage their teams the way they like to be managed. They tend to show up. And so if you're a kinetic, you're probably an athlete. I'm kinetic. So I played Division I lacrosse at Maryland, so I like getting yelled at. I like someone giving me the more the clock's ticking down, the more excited I get. Well, my husband's the total opposite. If the clock's ticking down and someone's yelling at him, he falls apart. That does not give him energy. He's the total opposite. He needs space to process and think and go away. And his energy doesn't seem as high as mine.
The
but his
kinetic
fully
is
charged
more,
battery is
the
fully
kinetic
charged.
for him is more in his gray matter.
Well, yes. And I think it's important to note that if you're managing someone like my husband, where it seems he's more of the cerebral, esoteric, your deep thinker, it's not fair to categorize someone like that as, they're lower energy. They're not. For them, that's them fully charged. And so it's about meeting people where they are. And that's why understanding each of their fastest paths of power is so huge. So for example, Sarge that you met on my team, so she has generative energy. Her fastest path to energy is she needs to be creating. She loves a whiteboard session. She loves a blank page. So whenever I have us in too much of a rinse and repeat, too much of a process where I'm like, this is happy days, everything's smooth. It's a rhythm. We're running, get the process. She gets a little bit passive aggressive. She'll write the per my last email because she needs to be able to create. So I know as a manager,
as I mentioned earlier.
Yes, exactly. Right. So I know as a manager, because I can't remember all these Myers-Briggs and StrengthsFinder and TNIJ and the 7 and the green. There's so many personality things. I'm like, I can't remember all that in the fly, on the moment, in the fly, when everyone is melting down. I need to know I have one word for each person on my team, and I click that lens to make a small tweak. So for Sarge, I know she has to create. So for her, I stop and I look at everything on her plate and I'm like, where is there room for her to get creative? Where can I say, hey, can you untangle this necklace over here with a new idea? Boom, she powers right back up. Now, someone else on my team, her name's Lou, she's synergistic energy. So her fastest path to power is connection. So when she works remotely. So whenever she starts to do sort of those passive aggressive emojis or you can just feel when they're starting to check out. I know it's because she's working too much in a silo. She hasn't been able to connect to others or the bigger mission. So I know it's time to have an in-person all hands. I invite her out. We all sit down. We have a big night. We have the chats. And then boom, she's back in the game for like 6 more months. So just knowing how to manage your teams based on their energy, it's so helpful because that is really what we bring that AI can't. I mean, look at all these LinkedIn posts, Seth. It's like everyone's copying and pasting the same AI slop that's just short, punctuated sentences with emojis. And it's, ultimately, when someone sends me an email or a text or even on social media, is this even them? Am I even talking to you or am I just talking to AI? And so that's why energy, like an exchange we're having here with video conferencing, energy never lies. No one can copy it. It is our last truth teller. And if trust is at the heart of transaction, this is all we have left. And it's an energetic exchange. I mean, energy is not something that you have. It's not an entity that you possess. Not to get too nerdy and, physicists.
Bring the nerd. Bring the nerd.
But so the first law of thermodynamics, which many people know, is that energy cannot be created or destroyed, right? So energy is not actually an entity that you possess. It's an experience that you process. It's a process. It's a transfer. Think of it more like water, right? So when you think about saying someone has good energy, what you're really referring to is the exchange, the active listening, the eye contact, the warmth, the joking, you and I having rapport before you hit record about our mutual love for Latin American languages and culture. So that's the energy. And so when you're feeling low vibe, yes, of course, you need to sweat, eat clean, and sleep. We know this. But really, you can be in the best physical shape of your life. But if you are not unblocking access to this experience of flow with others, you're going to still feel drained, even if you're following all the wellness hacks that Instagram tells you have to do. And what's crazy is that our study found that if you do more than 4.5 energizing activities a day, calling a friend, cup of coffee, take a breath, sweat, that's 4 right there. When you actually do more than that, when you try to do all these things that everyone's telling us all the time, red light therapy, sauna, our energy goes down. And so does our life satisfaction score. So
Right.
more is not more because effort and energy have an inverse relationship. Effort's expensive. So it's about figuring out how to unblock. And there's kind of like three key areas we talk about, but there's three places where you unblock access to that experience so that you can show up and bring your best and be magnetic and be persuasive and be kind. And people can't help but be drawn to you when you're showing up, firing at your best. And it's not about matching my crazy energy level or mimicking someone else's style. It's that authenticity that we can't fake because people know they can feel. You've gotten into an elevator with someone, you've been behind them in line, or you sat next to them on a plane, and you have not said a word, but you know exactly how they are feeling because their energy introduces them far before anything is exchanged verbally. And the same goes for business. I mean, we're always, you get on a Zoom call with, and you can just see, you can do a scan of the Zoom call, and you can, before anyone says a word, who you're like, okay, here we go. Let's
Yeah.
saddle up, right?
So true. So true.
Yeah.
So true. It's like a timestamp or a signature or a thumbprint, your energy print, right? I just want to take a moment, Erin. This was beautiful what you just distilled, and this is why our audience and our subscribers continue to come back. So, for those listening, watching, or listening, or both, drop some comments. We're going to get you information on Erin, not only her speaking, but you're going to learn about the power grid and be able to understand where you fall on the grid and where the people you work with, whether you supervise or their direct reports that you're responsible to, and so that we can optimize and maximize our energy. I often, here's a question I have, Erin. I look at all these time management programs and how to manage your calendar and how to time management. And for me, you know, we like to look at it, here at the Keynote Curators, as energy management and knowing where to direct and point and distribute the resources. Kind of like what you mentioned with your synergistic, the one that needs more connection, the one who's a little bit more isolated. Do you see a relationship there when people talk about managing their calendar and managing their time better, where it's really at the core of it, it's an energy management issue?
Well, Seth, preach louder. I couldn't agree more. I believe energy management is the new time management. What's interesting is because this is a meeting planner
Have you already
audience.
said that in your speeches? Because I did a lot of research, but I didn't come across that. But it occurred to me as you were distilling your distillations.
Yes, that's one of my opening lines. And that's my point of view. I believe that energy
Okay.
management is the new time management. But the bureaus that we work with, there's not a check down box for energy management just yet because it's a category that I'm pioneering. And it's interesting because conversations around energy have traditionally been either wellness or woo woo. And so what I have created with my body of work is neither wellness or woo woo. It is really about how we're managing our energy like the currency that it is, like time, like money. And really creating a framework that people can use that doesn't feel like 7 steps or 10 steps or 5
Right.
steps because we don't have the capacity for it
Yeah.
anymore. And so it has to be simple, it has to be effective. I created it for myself to manage my team. So I walk my talk, but in our study, we found that we interviewed people and said, for a leader that you admire, someone that you actually get on board with, what is it about them? And we gave them 20 options. It wasn't they had the fancy degree. It wasn't their experience, their skill set, moral compass, creativity, hours worked. It was their energy. That was the number one reason people. So if you're a leader and you're trying to galvanize buy-in at scale in your enterprise and no one's listening to you, most times it's not because the pitch deck wasn't perfect. It's not because, you haven't explained more information, which we can all access in a democratized way like never before using AI. It's the energy that you're transmitting with others. And your energy is your ultimate edge. And if you're not careful with it, it can be the biggest block between you and stepping into that next level of peak performance because people will not respond to what you're saying or asking if they're not feeling that energetic transfer. So it's not a topic yet in our industry. I'm doing a lot of educating on these calls. Like, oh, I thought you were going to tell us to like sleep more and drink water. It's like, no, this is, I think, what we have to prioritize more than anything else, especially as the computers continue to outperform us. I mean, it's your knowledge. It's not a superpower, it's a standard. And so the only thing you have double down on is the energy you bring.
It strikes me that part of the equation, and I'm going to yield to you being the smarter of the two. By the way, go Terps. Is that
Go
right? Go Terps.
Terps.
Okay. Part of the equation, and this might be a thesis that you can, find the holes in it, that this is a currency that is so valuable, but it's in our hands. We can take the reins of it and we can develop our awareness around it. But where I'm going is just that, the awareness. Just because we have the thought, oh, power grid, and I'm physical or I'm spiritual or I'm creative or I'm emotional or I'm mental, and where do I fall in on that? And I can know when there's a red flag. But that takes energy to be in touch with that and a certain level of awareness. Is that part of your work as well?
Yes. So the beautiful thing about this power grid is that it is the antithesis of having to dive super deep. I mean, it's a 5-minute PhD assessment people can take. And what makes it different from all of the other millions and trillions of personality tests is that it's not just how you feel, but it's also how the world perceives your energy, which is really
Mm,
important because how we think we're coming across, if you watch back your podcast interviews, I mean, I've done over 400 podcast interviews on my podcast. So I know, just like you, there are moments you watch back interviews and you're like, really, Erin? Like that was the question you had, or that was how you said it. Because
right.
the way we think we're coming across, then we watch the video, it's brutal. You're like, oh, people pay me to do things. What? So it is a big discrepancy between how our energy feels and how it's felt by others. And that's why this assessment is really important. It's not just what charges you and what drains you and who you're compatible with and what to do if you're not. All that's in there. But also, how does the world feel your vibe? Is it warm and inviting, or are you shutting people out? And what's interesting is that my whole philosophy is not actually about going and finding and doing more. In fact, it's quite the opposite. My body of work is that when it comes to energy management, subtraction is actually
Subtraction. Yep.
addition.
You're reading
So
my
so there's
mind.
so it's
Yeah.
3 big blocks that we're removing. Because again, remember, technically people say energy is a currency, but really it's a current. It's really an exchange. It's really an experience. It's not really a thing. And so our job, the energy is already there. You don't have to find it. You have to free it. You don't have to generate it, you have to liberate it. So how do you do that? Well, there's 3 big blocks that most of us do, and I'll fly over in 15 seconds. The first block is that we try to do it all. Doing it all is not the answer. And that, unfortunately, is what everyone tries to do. Add to cart, add to cart, add to cart. No, it's look in mirror. It's intrinsic. So it's not doing everything. It's dialing in on your instincts, on what you do best, your intuition, like where you shine, those strengths. Instincts are free, effort's expensive. So knowing that you have a very simple one word, power word, fast path to power, I remind myself all the time. If I start to have bad energy, I know I'm kinetic. I need to find a challenge. That's why my energy is low. It's that simple. The second thing people do is they just ditch it all. Quit culture. Like on Instagram, if it doesn't serve you, just set it free. Just quit the job, leave the.
Right.
Hey, look,
Right.
if it's illegal, if it's dangerous, if it's a terrible idea, if it's a subscription you don't need, right? Yes, quit it. But for the
Discard.
most part, we're far too quick to just throw the baby out with the bathwater. When instead, it's not about quitting; it's about shifting. It's about making those alignment choices, right? And then the third thing that we do, and this is the biggest block to your energy that needs to be removed if you want to have access to more of those experiences, is that maybe we're not doing it all, maybe we're not ditching it all, but we dodge things a bit. We dodge the clarity. We keep it in the gray. We left it unsaid. We leave that loop open. Closing
Mhm.
a loop with clarity, decision, counteracting the chaos and the confusion with clarity and decisiveness. It's like having a bunch of apps open on your phone running in the
Right.
background that are draining your battery.
Yeah.
We have to close the loops, getting clarity, making moves, getting out of that analysis paralysis. You can think about it 500 times, or you can think about it one time. But every single time you close a loop, you get clear, you ask for clarity. Is it A or B? Your boss says it has to get done faster. Okay, do you want to add resources or make the scope smaller? Right? Someone says we should hang out sometime. Do you want to hang out next week or next month?
Right.
Getting clear, all of that is draining our battery in the background. So looking in your life and saying, what am I dodging? What am I sitting and marinating in this messy middle? Because that is draining your battery and blocking you from that flow of energy. The minute you get clear, boom, you free up that exchange and you'll begin to feel more energized, whether it's personally or professionally.
That messy middle, I think a lot of people can relate to that, right? And whether they're asleep to it or they're doing it on purpose, the short-term payoff is that, they don't have to decide or don't have to commit or don't have to receive bad news or make more of an effort. But I think, that messy middle, the the payoff is short term and the cost is just tremendous. So, I can definitely, see that people identifying with that. Erin,
Mhm.
it's been such a joy. We've come to the end of this conversation. I have a lot more to interact with you on. I believe that, you being a former Division I college athlete at a program that was very important, energy on the field was important. I compete regularly at a high level in tennis. And as much as it's important to have the right grip and know some very specific techniques on how to stroke the ball or what to do in
Mhm.
certain scoring situations, my high school coach said the famous words, "So go your feet, so go you." And it
Mm.
was basically keep moving, energy. And it wasn't just, and he said, don't stand around like a cigar store Indian. And he had things to say about serves and what to do in doubles. He was a double specialist, but really his big levers were move, energy. There you go. Keep it moving, little brother. Come on, little brother.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, all the technique doesn't matter,
Mhm.
you know?
Absolutely. And
I
I think where it's tough is when people are looking to feel that energy, but they're going the wrong places. It's like
mm,
the harder they're trying,
yeah,
the more exhausted they're feeling. And then they just
yeah,
kind of start to give up, right? So
yeah,
so like your coach being a doubles specialist or like you being a tennis player, if you keep spending all of your time in no man's land, instead of either go to the net or it's baseline. Don't stay in the messy middle, even with tennis, right? That's no
right.
man's land. You're
That's
dead.
right,
So there's elements where you've learned I'm either at the net or I'm baseline, but I am not hanging out in no man's
right.
land.
Choose.
That is a correct choose.
Yeah,
And
that's
my final
awesome.
question for you, Seth, if I may, is what are your thoughts
Please.
on pickleball?
I think it's great. I don't play it, so I'm
Okay.
gonna stay. I'm gonna stay in the messy middle. I really do think it's great because it's gotten more people out. And what I like about pickleball is you can be pretty good pretty quick. So
Yes.
for novices, you can have the experience of um, really getting into it very quickly without a huge learning curve like maybe golf or some other sports. Um, and for those that are more advanced in stick and ball or racket and ball sports, it can be quite challenging. I'm more of a purist, so I like tennis. And where I play, I like that the pickleball courts are very, very far away, so we don't have to hear the
The
pitter
loud.
patter.
I know the
But
noise.
I'm all for
Oh,
it. I'm all for it.
okay. So I'm also a lifelong tennis player. You and I have so much in common. My husband is as well. And we fought liking pickleball as hard as we could. And now we hate ourselves because we are obsessed with it. We can't stop playing it. We barely play tennis anymore. It's so embarrassing. We were like
Right,
tennis elitists. And now, unfortunately, it's just so social. We've met so many wonderful friends.
right, right.
And I feel
Yeah,
like sometimes with tennis, you're like, all right, we're not here for 2 hours. We're good, right? With
yeah,
pickleball, you're like, one more game, one more game.
right.
So we hate ourselves for how much we love it, but we truly
Yeah.
are obsessed. In fact, I'm wearing a pickleball necklace right
Oh my
now, which
good.
is
Look at
really
that. Look
embarrassing.
at
I
that.
know. I
Well,
know.
at our
So,
next event together, I'll bring you some pickleball gear. When you see
okay.
Andy Roddick and even Agassi out there playing it, it's like it makes it even more appealing. So I'll probably dip my toes in there at some point.
Okay, we'll have to play. I'll bring you over on the team. It really is fun. Although I agree with you, tennis is a much more elegant sport. But when you watch the pros playing on YouTube, it's pretty fun to watch. I mean, they are unbelievable.
It is. Well, we're going to leave that pickleball note and say thank you for joining us, young Erin, and bringing your energy and bringing your competence, your connection, your spirit, your creativity, and all of it. It's just so appreciated. The great work you're doing, being an innovator and a pioneer in this field and really reframing the conversation. It's extraordinary. So thank you for all that great work.
Well, thank you so much, Seth. Muchas gracias, mucho gusto. Lo siento, mi español no es muy bueno, pero practico mucho.
Es buenísimo. And to our viewers and subscribers, one last time, just thanks for continuing to come back, and we will see you next time.